Let's catch up with the great Paul Murray, who gets out of bed early and comes in and joins us here on a Monday night.
Thanks, mate.
Or interrupt your nana nap, mate.
Yeah, come on.
Hey, we talked about polls last week, but I've got to get your take on the polls again, because this Channel 9 Resolve poll, isn't it? Very interesting, because especially what it says about Peter Dutton as a real alternative.
Well, two things are really important that are a little buried away from the headlines, right? Firstly, you are seeing a dramatic fall away for the government.
Yep.
However, what I find really interesting, this poll was in the market between Tuesday of last week and Saturday of last week. Now, the entire political establishment's hair was on fire because of the conversations in and around 2030. For that to have not affected the standings of the Liberal Party or Peter Dutton, really important.
Yep.
It also shows there is a massive problem for Labor in Queensland. It is. I mean, literally, the preferred Prime Minister rating there is 48% pro Dutton. And the third and final bit is the people who put the poll together. They ask questions as well as just get the data. And they say the comments that are coming back about cost of living and interest rates have now turned nasty. So people are now going to hold a government accountable, as they always should have.
2 points on that. One is, I think it just underscores why I've thought a really early election is just never on. They can't go before Queensland goes.
Correct.
They've got to allow the anti-Labor feeling in Queensland go through the state election so that it helps the federal government a bit better. So if it goes this year, it's got to go late. But the other point is this thing, that my observation over polls over the eons is that quite often you'll see people turning on the government and the government going down before the vote switches to the opposition. You know, they go in that sequence. So, and I know that's the way they'll be looking at it. So you know, what I'm saying, I don't want to be too buoyant here for the coalition, because there's a long way to go, and it's a first-term government. They normally get returned. But that's the sequence that they'd be very pleased to see.
Well, and also, don't forget the elections within the election that, of course, take place, right? Yeah. Where for the government, like every first-term government, lose seats, right? That is just the law of politics. It's the law of gravity, because there are things that you won on the way in that nobody expected you to win, okay? So, and this government doesn't have 90 seats like Abbott did or Rudd did. It doesn't have even more seats like Howard did. So that inevitable fallback means they are going to go into minority. The question is, how deep? Now, if they go into minority and say go as low as 72 seats, ironically, they're going to be okay, because there's enough people on the crossbench that aren't Greens and aren't Teals. If they go down to 70, then probably two of the left-wing Teals might get them there. Obviously, the Greens can give them 4 votes straight away. But so while Albo will say, well, I still get to be Prime Minister, the diminished nature of his prime ministership is really coming home. And what does it tell us about the professional political class, who tell us, oh, Dutton's unelectable? Well, guess what? You can't possibly step back on your 2030 targets. Guess what? Australians in polling on climate change has been the same since 2007, 10, 13, 16, 19 and 22. Do we want some action? Yes. Are we willing to pay for it? No. And we are paying for it now.
Look, the other thing is what happens after the election is Albanese has said he wouldn't form coalition with the Greens. Now, this is doublespeak, right? He will govern with the Greens 100%. Happily. It just won't be a formal coalition. They agree to back the government on supply or whatever. Whatever happens after the election, the Greens have more power with Labor, and that is not only is that a real worry for the country, but it's a very powerful campaigning tool for Peter Dutton.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, also, don't forget, they can't get anything through the upper house without the Greens.
Yep.
So the Greens are already the tail that's wagging the dog. Should they end up in a scenario of minority, well, they'll own the back 2 legs.
Oh boy, great stuff. Good to see you, Paul.
There's more anatomy, but I'll leave it out. It's not 9 o'clock yet.
Yeah, say that for after 9 o'clock on Paul Murray Live. You get all the
anatomically correct. 9 o'clock is an anatomically correct program.
Anatomically correct, if not politically correct.
Correct.
9 o'clock on Paul Murray Live.